to read with him. Good afternoon, and welcome. Welcome to the garden. Welcome to Garden Conversations with Rose. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon in sunny Antigua, and once more in the garden for the month of March, we are focusing on women. So we're using the app tagline, I am woman, she is woman, be bold, be vibrant, be you. We're also focusing on the woman and her many parts to include her words, her wisdom, her worth, her wars, her worry, and her womb. This is our second interview in our session, and we have with us today a very, very strong and independent and impactful queen with us in the person of Ramona Samuel. Ramona Samuel is my sister, my little sister. I sometimes refer to her as my gorgeous babe. And she comes from a wide background. So among the things she has done, she has been involved in early childhood education. She has been involved in children's ministry. She's also had a background in the performing arts, particularly in dance and drama or theater. She has been or is still a jewelry maker. She has a a page on Facebook referred to as Creative Faith Community, where she uses her love for the arts to impact persons with the use of the scripture to encourage and inspire. She is also a social justice activist, where she has looked and stood up for many important causes that impact persons in society. And of course, she's a mother as well. She is, in essence, a very vibrant, well-rounded female, a woman. And of course, professionally and of her work, she is a Methodist minister in the county of Essex in the United Kingdom. I am very, very pleased to have with us this afternoon, Ramona. Ramona, I want to thank you so very much for consenting to be with us in the garden, to give us a little taste and tidbit of what you believe to be what a woman is, how that has done well for you as a woman. And I am certain that our affiliate groups such as SSS and Trauma Transformers, and in addition, Creative Faith Community, among others, the persons there who are watching and listening will certainly enjoy what we have to put forward for you today. So as I would have said earlier, Ramona, we are looking at the tagline, I am woman, she is woman, be bold, be vibrant, be you. So I just want to ask you of sorts to start. When you hear the words, she is woman, and when you say, I am woman, how does that resonate within you and what does it mean for you?
Wow, that's quite a loaded question. I'm thinking about what is in the news at the moment with the new judge, and I can't remember her name. Anyway. Wow, so when I think of I am woman, I feel like the woman is a creator. Woman is a source of life. A woman is a place of refuge. A woman is a welcoming space. A woman is a nurturing space. A woman is a source of comfort, of strength, of vitality and growth. So when I say I am woman, I'm talking about all those things. A woman is born out of diversity. A woman is able to be sustained through diversity. And a woman represents courage. I have on my WhatsApp status, I am woman, hear me roar. The kind of image I think you would think of somebody who's bold, somebody who's vivacious, bold as a lion, and someone who is strong in who they are and confident in all that they bring to the table and aware of their strengths as well as their weaknesses. So that's in essence what I think of a woman.
And indeed, those words do resonate well within me. I think with the previous person we had here, she talked about resilience. And so when you mention courage, that also taps in very nicely in what we ourselves believe us to be as women. Now, we both grew up in the same household. I think up to about maybe for you, the age of 15, we would have lived in the same household. And there are many things that we would have encountered during that time that may or may not have impacted upon us in being women. So I need you now to go back in time a little bit into yourself within that little girl that you knew and see if maybe somewhere within there was something that stood out and that even as you describe yourself, that was probably there at that time to describe you as woman, or was it that over time you had to bring those forth? If you would go back into yourself, tell us a little bit about the little girl, Ramona.
I think that certainly at this stage in my life, I think I'm very much tapping into that little girl, because I see a little girl who was inquisitive, who was interested in life, who had big questions, who were asking the big questions. One of my early memories is kind of looking up at the sky and wondering what God, who is God, who made God, and so on, and being inquisitive about those questions. Someone who was always dreaming about better, dreaming about becoming something, dreaming about flourishing in life. And I think part of that was to do with, you know, like you said, the stuff that we went through growing up, the kind of the terrible things that we saw and experienced. But also there was something I think about the women that were around us at the time, particularly in church, because that was our main context of seeing other people. And I look at those women and I see their strength. I mean, at the time, I remember I would think, well, why are they being such pushovers, you know? But I look back now and realize just how strong these women were, you know, and the kind of things that they were experiencing, but yet they were able to stand, they were able to be themselves. And even though life was throwing stuff at them, they weren't crumbling, you know, at least not, they didn't appear to be crumbling. And I want to talk maybe a little bit about the courage a little bit later, because there is something about society that makes us think that courage always looks like a lion. And sometimes courage looks like a lion that's asleep, or a baby lion. But anyway, so that kind of vulnerability about that's mixed up in courage. So I think I'm learning to tap into that little girl who was fearless, I think, and just had the zest for life and was willing to put herself out there and just do whatever she thought she wanted to do. And not really giving too much thought to the consequences. But having that kind of independent spark and spirit. So I think I'm at the stage at 53, going on 54, where I'm tapping into that girl and that little girl. And she's come alive. She's standing up, you know, she's standing up inside me and she's kind of cheering me on and saying, you can do this. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It has, and I'm smiling because I'm thinking back of you as a girl, and indeed I believe you had that thing in there, and so I'm so happy to hear you say that now you're tapping into all those parts and bits of you as a girl. Now you were mentioning something about society in the sense that you said sometimes people think that courage or strength has to be that loud voice. It can be something quiet. So that just segues right into the other question I have for you, which is, we know that we live in society and it impacts us a lot on how we feel, what we do, what we are expected to do. So do you think that society alone has that responsibility to determine for us who we ought to be as women, or is it us? Are we the ones who need to determine that for ourselves? Or could it be a combination of both?
Well, I think that to some extent, society exists, not outside of us, so we exist within the realms of society, and we cannot remove ourselves from that. So obviously there will be an impact as to how we view ourselves. But I think that we have to make the journey of recognizing that society is made up of flawed human beings. For not everything society pushes to us is true, is right for us. So we have to know ourselves well enough to be able to actually say, no, I'm not going to accept that you're putting on to me. But recognizing that I need to exist in certain spaces in a particular way. So, I may need to quell some things in me, but it has to be with an understanding. It has to be intentional. It cannot be just, I'm just giving in without actually thinking about. I think choice plays a large part in it. So, I could choose to, let me give an example. There was a difference with somebody starving a child and not giving a child food, and with a person deciding to not eat. Yeah, so one is happening, that person doesn't have a choice in it. Somebody's doing that to them. And the other somebody is making a choice and saying, I know I probably will feel hungry later, but I'm not going to eat at this point. So it's about knowing ourselves well enough to be able to be courageous enough to make those choices, even though we know what the consequences might be, and being strong enough to know that it doesn't take away from who I am as a person, even though I might be seeming to give in to a particular way of thinking. It is done so with a knowledge that actually I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing it, and I know the consequences that's going to come out of it, and I'm making that choice to do that. So I think it's a little bit of both, knowing that we are part of society, and that has an unconscious or subconscious influence on how we are, because the things we are taught, the things we see around us, and then there comes a point in everyone's life, woman or man, where they have to say, hang on a minute, that was said, but I'm seeing something different, and I believe something different. It's about having that courage to be able to recognize that, and being okay with saying to society, well, no, I'm not going to accept that definition you're putting on me. I'm not going to accept that your rhetoric, because I know who I am.
Okay, and that kind of sort of answered some of the things I was going to ask you again, because you talked about women needing to choose and determine for themselves what it is they're going to embrace and accept from society. There are many women in our society who still aren't able to fully embrace themselves because they are stuck of sorts, because of all the labels that would have been attached to them as women, because of expectations that one expects them to do, and because maybe they do not have the strength within them to do that. So based on what you said earlier, what little bit of encouragement could you give those women? What can you say to those women, in addition to what you said, to assist them in moving away from that?
I think it has to start from within. And I think that if you find yourself in a situation where you're stuck, I'm making the assumption that you're stuck. Some people don't realize that they're stuck, you see? And so in that sense, there is nothing that anybody can do. It has to begin from a place of recognition and saying, okay, you know what? I'm in this place and it's uncomfortable for me, and I want to do something about it, or I don't feel able to do something about it, but I know that there's something wrong. So awareness has to come first. Awareness has to come first before correction and change. If I'm not aware of something, I can't really change it. And it could be that somebody says something to you, but I think in certain situations of life, it doesn't matter what other people say and how much other people say something to you, until you yourself come to that point and say, actually, I heard it before 20 years ago or whatever, and I'm beginning to see it now. And that's where the journey happens. So I would say to women, don't be afraid to dig deep. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, to do a kind of inventory of your life and where you are, where, relationships, family life, work life, whatever. Do a sort of inventory and say, okay, this is where I am, this is the things that are happening. And try to work out if there are things within that you are not happy about. And then once you've done that, what are the things that I can change? What are the things that I cannot change, but I can make some adjustments, go through this thing because I can't change it. So for example, if you're in a job that is, you're feeling dissatisfied, discontented with, is no longer kind of serving you, you could just get up and leave your job. But then if you think about it, you've got a family, you've got people depending on you for support, you've got bills to pay and so on. It wouldn't serve you to just leave that job. So then within that context, you'd say, okay, what do I need to get to where I want to be? How do I get out of this? So you begin to look at other areas, look at other jobs, and work your way out where you get to a point where okay, I can leave this job safely without it causing harm to me and without it causing harm to other people. And the same for, relations. So women who were caught in, terrible abusive relationships where they're dependent on the partner for financial support. It's really difficult to just say to the woman, you should just leave, because it's not that easy, especially if you have children thrown into the mix, young children. And so it's about saying, okay, this is really bad and I want to get out, but I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to begin that journey of coming out of this. So looking out for charities and organizations that support women in relationships, reaching out to them for help and asking questions, getting advice from people, speaking to trusted friends, that you can depend on, and getting some advice, and have people around you who will be able to support you when you are ready to make that change, when you are ready to make that leap out of whatever bad situation you are in. Because one of the things I've really been learning the last few years is that I must make decisions that are good for me. And that is not about being selfish. It's about saying, how would it harm me? And the harm doesn't necessarily mean, physical harm or anything like that, but it's harming my well-being, my inner peace, my emotional well-being, my mental well-being. How will this particular action harm my emotional and mental well-being? And am I at a stage where I can deal with that? I have the tools to deal with the harm. And if I'm not, then how do I build myself up so that when I do make that decision, I am able to do so without causing unnecessary harm to myself? Yeah.
Beautifully, well said. So I'm hearing from what you just explained that we women must have a sense of awareness. We need to be able to understand where we're at, and when we need to make a decision, what ought to be done. We also need to go into ourselves, do some introspection, some review of what is and what isn't, what works and what doesn't. We also need to have that support. And of course, we must be able to take care of ourselves so that ultimately we will be able to help those around us, in particular for those of us who have children. And so that leads me into the other part. Now, both of us have been fortunate that our first, well, I don't know if it's, well, I guess it is. We both have females as our firstborns. So our firstborns were both daughters. So the question is, what do you think our role as women is in laying that foundation for our daughters, being able to help them go through, not that we're making the decision for them ultimately as they get older, but what it is that we need to do for them as their girls in growing up, so that they themselves can come to that place of being a self-assured woman, so that when they say, I am woman, there is a sense of positivity and restfulness within that. What is our role as women, those of us who have girls, girl children, female children.
Mm. Yeah, I think really first of all, it's about being human to them, and not that you're going to show them everything about your own emotions. You have to be able to deal with your emotions in such a way that they see that. So I'm not talking about pretending to be strong and having a stiff upper lip or anything like that. I'm talking about having the ability to not vomit in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, so it's really a tension about that strength and that vulnerability, which I think is part of the same coin, courage and vulnerability. It's having that sense of self. So, okay, I know my weaknesses and I'm able to own up to my weaknesses. I'm able to own up to my mistakes. I'm able to say when I'm wrong. And one of the things I remember when my kids were younger, I made a point of, because I think, and I'm going to say this, I think generally speaking, Caribbean parents do not apologize to their children, okay? They don't, they never wrong, right? You're a child, I'm the adult. It doesn't matter what you do, I'm the adult, so I'm always right.
Yeah.
I made a decision really not to be that with my children.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I tried to do was to admit when I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If I shouted at them, I said, I'm sorry, Mom, we shouldn't have shouted. So they need to know that I'm able to own up to when I'm wrong,
Mm-hmm.
And be able to say sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Expecting them to do those things, we have to mirror that to them.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it, we cannot do as I say and not as I do. That doesn't really work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, I think that's really, really important to be able to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that way. And sometimes I would say, I'm a bit stressed at the moment or whatever is happening or whatever. And I would say to them, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have behaved in that way. And so that's important, to be able to own up to your mistakes to them, and not just your mistakes in general, but especially in the way you deal with them, to say, hey, this is wrong. So exemplifying a particular way of being. And I think one of the things as well is exemplifying generosity. How am I showing myself to be generous to my children? If they ask me for something, how am I showing myself to be generous to them? Because I think generosity is a very important part of life. We cannot exist in the world without generosity. Somebody has to be generous. I'm talking about generosity, not in terms of finances necessarily, but generosity of emotions, generosity of time, generosity of mental space, mental head space. So we, loving on them, telling them you love them all the time, not being afraid to hug them, letting them know you're there for you and you're there to listen to them, whatever they might be going through, and just creating a safe space for them to thrive in, and not putting them down, but encouraging them, pointing out to them the things that they're doing well. Because if we don't do that, then they grow up with this sense of not really knowing who they are. So we have to build them up. It's our job to build them up. But also we have to do that within a sense of understanding that they have their own agency. So we are not acting on their behalf. Of course, when they're little, we have to make choices for them. But as they grow, we pull away a little bit more and pull away, because we have created that space for them to feel confident. So we can pull away a little bit more. We're not holding on to them too tightly and say, oh, don't leave me, don't let go. We little by little, we're loosening the strings, yes, so that they can have that sense of independence and know that the choices they make is their choices, yeah, and not imposing my own beliefs on them. So I would say that I know you asked me specifically to girls, but I would say for me, that's for both boy and girl. And for, I guess, specifically to a girl, it would be to teach them to say no. And that it's okay to say no. And when children are little, they say no a lot, and we always tell them, don't say no. But I think, especially for girls, it's okay. We have to teach them that it's okay to say no. No is an acceptable answer, that they don't have to show up for everybody and be everything to everybody. It's okay to say no and be confident in doing so.
I particularly like what you said about it's okay to say no, because unfortunately I've seen, because of course being an educator, having worked with children for all this time, our girls struggle a lot with the idea of saying no, and actually that causes them to end up in a lot of situations that they shouldn't have been in, because they just do not know how to say no. It's not expected that they say no. So I think this is a very, very, very vital point that you made.
Yes,
It's
it is
okay
vital
to say no as a girl. That's very important.